My name is Tariq. I am 29 years old and I grew up in Amman, Jordan. When I was a boy, my father and the men in our neighborhood taught me that the world had two kinds of people: those who followed our way and those who did not. From early morning I learned prayers, rules, and stories that shaped how I saw everything. I learned to read long texts by heart. People praised me when I spoke loudly about faith and duty. I felt proud because I thought I was doing what was right. As I grew, the lessons turned harder. The leaders I followed said sacrifice and struggle were noble. They also said our community must be defended by strong actions. I watched neighbors clap when men left to join groups. I saw gatherings where people talked about power and who belonged. I felt wanted. I felt I had a clear purpose. My life was ordered: study, practice, obey. The words I learned became my map for life. Even though everything seemed certain, sometimes a small voice inside me wondered about kindness, mercy, and peace. I could not name the feeling then, but it sat in my chest. I kept learning the rules, but that quiet question stayed with me like a shadow. In my heart I wanted to be brave and strong. I wanted to belong. But I also wanted to know what truth really looked like when people were hurting. Faith, duty, obedience, identity, doubt. These words lived inside me, side by side. They would soon pull me in different directions. By the time I was a teenager, I no longer just listened to the men in our neighborhood. I began to follow them. They said we must act, not only speak. So I joined them on their journeys through the streets of Amman. I remember the smoke rising from broken houses, and the cries of families as we stormed into their doors. We targeted Christians, calling them outsiders, calling them names that made them feel less than human. I thought I was defending God. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love to have you join us. We're always excited to welcome thoughtful people like you into this growing community. This is one of those testimonies that shakes people's beliefs and makes you question everything you thought you knew. I was praised for being bold. They said I was strong, and I believed them. At night, I would replay the scenes in my head: fire, fear, anger. My hands shook not from guilt, but from the rush of it all. We took pride in power, in showing the world that we could not be weak. My friends laughed and bragged about what we had done. I laughed with them, though deep inside I felt no peace. Even after long nights of action, when I lay on my bed, my chest felt empty. I wondered why I was restless when everyone said I was serving God. I told myself that doubt was weakness. I tried harder, I fought more, I shouted louder. But the emptiness never left me. One night, after a violent attack, I sat alone on the roof of our house in Jabal al-Wabda. The city lights stretched far, but the silence of the night pressed on me. I whispered to myself, if this is truly the way, why do I feel like something is missing? As months passed, my mind grew heavier. The leaders around me still praised me, but their words no longer carried comfort. I began to see the faces of those we hurt. Mothers clutching their children, men begging for mercy, the broken walls of homes that once held laughter. At night, I could not sleep. I tossed and turned, asking myself if this was really what God wanted. I remember once walking past a small church hidden in the corner of a street. I heard faint singing inside. The voices were soft, not loud or angry like the chants I knew. Something stirred inside me, like a gentle wind brushing against my heart. I wanted to step closer, but my feet froze. I pulled myself away, but the sound stayed in my ears long after. My father noticed that I was not as eager as before. He told me that doubt is dangerous, that I must stay firm and strong. I nodded, but in my heart I kept wrestling. I wanted truth, not just commands. I wanted peace, not just endless struggle. Many times I lifted my hands and asked the unseen God, show me what is right. If this is not truth, then guide me. I am lost. For the first time in my life, my prayers felt honest. That night, after my whispered prayer, something unusual happened in my sleep. That night, I found myself in a dream that felt more real than any memory. I was drifting alone in the vast center of the ocean, the endless water stretching into darkness in every direction. My body felt heavy, and I was tired, afraid, and unsure of where to go. The silence was so deep that I could hear my own breathing rise and fall against the emptiness. Then, suddenly, a light appeared in the distance. At first, it was small, but it grew brighter and brighter until the darkness around me melted away. I tried to look at the figure in the light, but the brightness was too great. My heart raced and I fell to my knees, covering my face. From within the light, a voice reached me, not harsh, not angry, but full of calm and strength. He revealed to me that I did not need to be afraid anymore. He told me he was the way, the truth, and the life. In his hand, he showed me a book, and he let me know that if I wanted to find truth, I should read it and follow him. The moment I heard those words, the ocean no longer felt empty. Hope, like cool water, rushed into my heart. I wanted to stay in that place forever, but the dream ended, and I woke up in my bed with tears in my eyes. I sat up, trembling, asking myself if what I saw was real. Yet, deep inside, I knew this was no ordinary dream. It was an answer to the prayer I had whispered on my rooftop. When I woke up that morning, my heart was still pounding. The words from the dream echoed in my mind like they had been carved into stone. I could not ignore them. I remembered the book I had seen in the hand of the shining figure. I had never held such a book in my life, but I knew it was the Bible. Quietly, without telling anyone, I took my phone and searched for it. I found an app that contained the Holy Bible, and with shaky hands I began to read. At first, I was afraid my father or my friends would see. Afraid I was doing something forbidden. But my hunger for truth was stronger than my fear. The first words that gripped me came from the teachings of Jesus about love, mercy, and peace. He spoke of blessing those who make peace and loving even your enemies. As I read, I felt warmth spreading through me. These words were not like the commands and rituals I had known before. They did not push me into anger, they pulled me into hope. When I came to the words where Jesus declared that He is the way, the truth, and the life, I stopped reading and began to cry. Those were the very same words He had revealed to me in the dream. For the first time, I felt certain that God Himself was guiding me. I hid my phone under my pillow, but in my heart I no longer wanted to hide. I wanted to keep reading, to keep knowing more of this Jesus who spoke peace into my restless soul. As the days passed, I read the Bible every night in secret. The more I read, the more I felt alive, as if my heart was finally breathing fresh air. But at the same time, fear began to grow. What if my father discovered? What if my old friends found out? They would call me a traitor, maybe even harm me. The struggle was heavy, and I felt torn between two worlds. When I walked through the streets, I still carried the old image of Tariq, the bold young man who shouted loud and fought holy war without fear. But inside I was changing. I no longer wanted violence. I no longer wanted to see people suffer. Instead, I thought about the words of Jesus, about forgiveness, about being a peacemaker. The teachings cut deep into my heart like a sharp sword. One evening, I overheard some of my old companions planning another attack. My stomach tightened. Before, I would have been the first to join them, but now I stayed quiet. I walked away, pretending I was not feeling well. That night, I prayed in silence, asking Jesus to give me courage to let go of the life I had lived. In my dreams again, the light appeared. This time, He let me know that I was no longer bound to the darkness. He revealed me that I must leave behind the old ways and follow the path of life. I woke up with a decision burning in my chest. I could not go back. The road ahead would not be easy, but my heart was already leaning toward the light. The decision was clear in my heart, but walking it out was not simple. I began to distance myself from the group I once called brothers. They noticed my silence, my absence from their meetings, and soon their questions turned sharp. "Why don't you come with us? Are you losing your fire?" they pressed. I forced weak smiles, but inside I knew I could no longer share in their ways. One night, I gathered courage and told my father that I did not want to take part in violent actions anymore. His eyes grew dark, and his voice thundered through our small home in Amman. He accused me of shame, of weakness, of betraying the very faith he had raised me in. My heart broke hearing his words, but even as tears filled my eyes, I felt a quiet strength inside me. I knew the voice of truth was calling me forward. As you follow along with this powerful testimony of transformation, we invite you to engage with the community. Let us know where you're watching from and share your thoughts on how his journey resonates with you. Your reactions and comments help create a meaningful dialogue around life-changing experiences like these. For weeks, tension filled the air at home. My father barely spoke to me, and my friends began to keep their distance. I felt alone, stripped of the life I once knew. Yet in my solitude, I found myself opening the Bible more and more. Each word felt like a seed planting peace in my soul. I discovered that real strength was not in destroying lives but in loving them. One night, as I read in silence, I lifted my eyes and whispered, "If this way is true, then help me stay strong." A calmness settled in my room, as though an unseen hand rested on my shoulder. It was then I realized I was not walking this road alone. Not long after, I searched quietly for people who believed in Jesus. I was afraid, but I needed to meet someone who could help me understand what I was reading. After days of looking online, I found the address of a small house fellowship in East Amman. My heart raced the evening I went there. Every step toward the door felt heavy, as if fear itself wanted to chain me back. When I entered, the room was simple. A few men and women sat in a circle, their Bibles open. They welcomed me without questions, offering tea and kind smiles. I had never seen such warmth from strangers. At first, I said little, only listening. They prayed together, not with anger or demands, but with gentle voices, asking God for peace and guidance. For weeks, I returned, each time feeling more at home. I began to share parts of my story, though not everything at once. I feared they would reject me if they knew my past. But one evening, when I finally confessed that I had once persecuted Christians, they did not push me away. Instead, one man placed his hand on my shoulder and prayed for me with tears in his eyes. In that moment, I understood what forgiveness truly meant. The fellowship became my new family. I found brothers and sisters who accepted me, not for what I had done, but for the grace that was now changing me. Through them, I saw the love of Christ made real. Day by day, my hunger to know more of Jesus grew. I woke up early to read the Bible before work, and at night I stayed up late, underlining verses and writing prayers in a small notebook I kept hidden. Each page felt alive. The stories of Jesus healing the sick, forgiving sinners, and teaching about the kingdom of God touched me deeply. One evening, while reading the Sermon on the Mount, my eyes rested on the words about blessing those who make peace. It struck my heart. All my life, I had believed strength was shown through fighting, but here I saw that true children of God were called peacemakers. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and whispered, "This is what I want to be." At the house fellowship, I began to join in prayer. At first my words were few, but over time I found myself speaking to God like to a friend. I asked Him to clean my heart, to forgive my past, and to use me for His purpose. Each time we gathered, I felt stronger. Each verse I read seemed to lift the heavy stones from my chest. Slowly, even the faces of those I had harmed came back to me, but this time not to haunt me. Instead, I felt sorrow for them, and I prayed that God would heal their pain. It was a strange and beautiful change. My heart, once filled with hate, was now learning to love. As the months passed, the emptiness that once lived inside me was gone. Instead, my heart burned with a new purpose. I wanted to share the peace I had found in Jesus. No longer did I dream of leading men into battle or raising fires in the night. I dreamed of helping the broken, of speaking words that would bring hope, not fear. I began visiting families in my neighborhood quietly, not with anger but with kindness. Some were surprised, even suspicious, because they remembered the boy who once walked with the radicals. But slowly, as they saw my gentleness, their eyes softened. I carried bread to the hungry, sat with widows, and played with children. These small acts filled me with more joy than any shouting or fighting ever had. One day, at the fellowship, I told my story openly from beginning to end. My voice shook, and tears came when I spoke of my past. But instead of judgment, the room filled with prayer and gratitude to God. I realized then that even my darkest days had been turned into a testimony of His power to save. I understood that God does not waste our pain. He had taken my anger and turned it into compassion. He had taken my shame and turned it into a story of hope for others. I was no longer Tariq the fighter. I was Tariq, a follower of Christ, called to bring light where once I spread darkness.